Namaste, Adab, hello. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR with a special discussion, unexpected one, as 10 precious lives were lost in Vizag, the would-be capital of Andhra Pradesh state. Styrene is the reason. The styrene gas leaked from LG Polymers company situated in and around Vizag in Venkatapuram village. The people residing in Venkatapuram 1, Venkatapuram 2, Padmanavapuram, SC and BC colonies are the ones who have very much affected. Children, middle-aged, old-aged, everyone were surprised, shocked and succumbed. Many were hospitalized. The gas leak happened in the early hours when people were asleep. So by the time they could realize, most of them they became unconscious or incoherent or falling down. So many calls have come stating that there was no alarm or a siren to notify that something abnormal is happening in the factory. That would have at least given some space and time for people to at least come out and take measures. Even the organizations, right from police to disaster management or other concerned, including the district collectorate, would have got an ample amount of time to checkmate and save lives. But that is history. The fact is 10 precious lives lost and people are still in the hospitals. They are getting discharged. Some needed oxygen, others needed ICU ventilation therapy. So even Dr. Guleria, AIMS superintendent, was also on record. There is no treatment, just like corona, except mitigation or support therapies. Because this mainly predominantly affects, in his own language, the respiratory system as well as the brain central nervous system. And it has got some telling effects on the skin, though to a minor extent, and subsequently other organs may be involved. And even after you recover, depending on the gas you have inhaled, people, the innocent people having done no wrong, have to live with that lifelong. Why this in the midst of corona? We have been reiterating right from the day one that the state government and the union government, who had to take the lead, were running helter-skelter, literally blind, because there was no preparedness in the name of corona. Since it was declared pandemic, and much before that it was declared as a national health emergency. So panic-stricken, going blind, no preparedness, and could not put the disaster management measures in place, either for people, because we have been telling people are at risk, whether it is corona or this styrene gas leak which has happened at Vizag. People are at risk. People should be informed. Whatever measures you take should support people in that direction. That was not happening. So the failure of these disaster measures, which you should have taken in the initial stages before lockdown. What if you lock down, and what if you go on extending it? Did union government, state governments who are representing the political parties who are representing the governments, did they have any idea? Did they discuss it with concerned managements or concerned officials, right from pollution control board to disaster management officials, right from Union Ministry for Environment or Industries to the district collectors, who are supposed to have the contingency plans in case of any emergencies by the companies given to the collectors. In turn, they should have sensitized the public, people who are living in and around those areas, of the impending danger of such crisis, which may arise. If arises, what? How to protect themselves? How to mitigate the suffering? And did, right from collector to union ministry, did they do this exercise? No, because of these deaths and those are hospitalized, it's clear indication that they have not done any exercise. There was no preparedness before Corona lockdown. Not only that, the glaring discrepancies in administration, in regulation, in permissions to factories which endanger lives has become once again more prominent after we have seen what has happened in Bhopal gas leakage, the tragedy. Even the people who are surviving, they are surviving with many deformities, whether it is physical or otherwise. We have not learnt our lessons. Even with this factory or company in concern now, there were many such instances which have happened in the past involving this company, and even the security guard and others have succumbed. What were the organizations doing right from law and order? Why did they not book a case? What was the pollution control board doing? What was the district collector doing? And how are they permitted to run such factories? Are these factories meant for the welfare and development of the people of that region, of that state and the country as a whole? Or we catering to the companies' benefits so that those who start these companies, they become rich, neo-rich and enter Forbes so that they take care of these political parties as well as they take care of all those who associate and support in the name of ancillary units, so that they keep on raking up money and in the name of jobs without they getting affected but putting people at risk, whether it is Corona or this LG Polymers Styrene gas leak disaster. So this is the topic for discussion, and we have our eminent environmentalist who writes judgments for Supreme Court. He is none other than Mr. Sagar Dhara, and he is also a risk analyst also. He was UN consultant, ex-consultant. Welcome to this special discussion, sir.
Thank you.
Very sorry to say, let us pray for the innocent souls who lost their lives, and let us convey our heartfelt sympathies to all those families.
Absolutely.
Hope they overcome this.
Absolutely. There was a time when I would visit plants and, where accidents have happened. And this was when I was in my 30s. And I would see human body parts plastered on the wall of workers who've been involved in accidents, hands with blood plastered. And I used to retch. Having done all that kind of work of doing what is called accident incident analysis, I stopped doing it after some time because I couldn't stand seeing that kind of blood and body parts all over the place and so on. So these are all to a large extent avoidable tragedies, to a large extent. They are a product of circumstance, and a circumstance which the people who actually suffer have never asked for this. They've never asked to be part of that risk. That risk is put on them. And they go there for a little bit to earn a little bit of money, or they stay somewhere and some risk-bearing plant comes and sits next to them, and then they get washed out. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that how do we move forward in all this? But let's talk about the plant itself initially. Now, it's styrene. Well, it's not a very toxic substance, but it is a toxic substance basically, and essentially it is used for making plastics, different kinds of plastics. Yeah. Fine. It also has certain probable properties in the health effect properties, which basically still is being investigated as to whether it is a suspected carcinogen, cancer causing substance, but that's not yet proven. Right. But yes, it is tarred everywhere that it is being investigated. Okay. But if you inhale, if you're exposed to styrene once, it doesn't mean you'll get cancer. That is not the way it works. You have to be exposed
it proves that it is fatal when you breathe it more. As
yes,
that is on record now.
Yeah. If obviously in high
And
concentrations.
we don't know what's going to happen with those who have survived.
Right.
Let's pray that.
So in high concentrations, styrene obviously is going to cause death or is going to cause a serious health impact. There's no
Because
doubt
they were
about
in
it.
deep sleep.
So basically it leaked at about 3 or 2:30 or 3 in the morning, and that's the time when the wind is very still.
Okay.
So the gas, this is a heavier than air gas,
Okay.
and it remains, the vapor remains, it hugs the ground and remains concentrated for a very long time.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world at the middle of the night, you have the very still winds.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, we know that being a coastal region, the wind would probably be moving towards the coast, which means it's moving eastwards.
Okay.
So it's the colonies east of this company which were, basically probably affected. We don't know what the actual wind direction was or wind speed was.
Okay.
Okay. Now, having said that, since we don't know how much gas came out,
Right.
I quickly modeled the leak for 2 tons, 5 tons and 10 tons.
Right.
And what I found was that if it is 2 tons, the vulnerable zone is approximately about 2 kilometers.
Okay.
If it is 5 tons, it's about between 2.5 to 3 kilometers. And if it's 10 tons,
Official in the press brief involving CM, he said it was into 1 to 3 kilometers range.
that's a pretty broad range. I mean, 1 kilometer means it's less than 2 tons that is leaked.
But again, 3
But if
kilometers.
it's 3
they are not
kilometers, it means
specific.
5 tons,
It should be more than
So-
5 tons.
Yeah,
By-
maybe. We don't
by
know.
yardstick.
We'll come to know. So I deliberately leaked. And then what I found was that whether it was 2 tons, 5 tons or 10 tons,
Right.
the area around had dense population. Not immediately around the plant, but at a little distance, more than half a kilometer. And this morning I spoke to some people from Visakhapatnam.
Right.
So you have dense population right around a plant which I believe has been there for now 50 years.
Right.
Why did this happen? I mean, why was population allowed to go and settle?
That's
right
that's
next
a
to
$1
this,
million
plant?
question. What was GVMC doing and all the officials were doing?
Right. Okay.
That's
So-
people at risk. That's what we have been
Yeah.
saying.
So the point is this, that there seem to be several, let us say, violations that have happened. Okay. The first violation is that I was on the Andhra Pradesh Pollution Control Board about 20 years back.
Right.
And board means I was on one of their committees, and that committee actually passed an order saying that if any plant in Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh was the biggest state, the United Andhra Pradesh,
I know.
which includes Telangana and Andhra, and that order was obviously applicable to all plants in both what are now 2 states.
Right.
And that order was that any plant carrying hazardous substances
Right.
must put up a map.
Right.
And here is a map put up by Indian Oil Corporation.
Right.
Must put up a map of what is the maximum vulnerable zone
Right.
if a catastrophic accident happens.
Right.
Now, 2 questions arise. Here is a Pollution Control Board order.
Right.
Did the plant put it up? And did the Pollution Control Board actually enforce its own order?
That's really
Because after having actually passed this order,
right.
okay, what did happen was that when we went on inspections, even in Vizag,
Right.
sometime after passing this order,
Right.
we found that even plants like Hindustan Petroleum did not comply with this order.
Goodness.
And several plants did not comply. Some plants complied. And I've even got photographs of some of the plants which complied. Okay. Now, the minute you put up a vulnerable zone map of this sort, it basically tells the population around that in the event of an accident, this is the area that's going to be impacted. Okay.
Yeah.
So it appears that this was not done.
Okay.
So the Pollution Control Board did not enforce its own order, and obviously, since it did not probably enforce its own order, the plant did not put up such a map. This we know because earlier we
journalist-
spoke to the
yes, the
journalist.
journalist who was
from
very
Vizag, that
categorical
no such
and clear.
map was visible.
Except that
Right.
mirror which
Okay.
allows you to.
Yeah. The second violation, like I was saying, is why were people allowed to settle so close to a plant?
Yeah.
What are the land use, rules of Visakhapatnam, and where was the violation there? And who permitted this violation to happen?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The third thing is we know for a fact that, whenever a plant shuts down and reopens or something of that sort, that it has to be done according to a standard operating procedure which the plant has to actually write.
Right.
And when you open a plant, you have to do it very carefully,
Right.
because that is when, mishaps happen. And I will tell you the case of a particular mishap which happened fairly close to where I used to stay in Bombay at one time.
Right.
This is in Calico mills, and the plant was shut down, and when they started opening up the plant, 2 tons of chlorine leaked out.
My goodness.
And there was a gate meeting of the union, and one worker died immediately, and about more than 100 workers had to be hospitalized in Zion Hospital.
Okay.
So this is known that when you restart a plant which has been shut down, that these kind of accidents are likely to happen.
Right.
So what were the instructions that the Pollution Control Board and the Factories Inspectorate gave to different plants?
Right.
So, since we are in corona virus lockdown,
Right.
did the Pollution Control Board and the Factory Inspectorate provide guidance as to how to restart these plants? How,
Right.
with what kind of care did they do it? Is the question.
Right.
Okay? If they have not done it,
Right.
then obviously I would say that there is a criminal liability on the part of the Pollution Control Board
Right.
and the Factory Inspectorate,
Right.
because this is nothing but negligence on their part.
Utter criminal negligence.
Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
And they should be made to pay a fat compensation for it. They should be, and their member
Penalized.
secretaries and the chief factory inspector should be hauled into court and taken to task for this.
Right. Until unless you do that, these things keep repeating.
Yeah, it's not LG Polymers obviously is at fault.
Right. Because these people, they have,
Right.
this is nothing but dereliction of their
Yes.
responsibilities, duties, has helped this LG Polymers to just ignore everything.
Yes, so
Both are equally liable.
yeah,
Right.
so it's not just LG Polymers
Right.
which should be held responsible for the accident.
Right.
Equally, the Pollution Control Board
Right.
and the Factory Inspectorate
Right.
should be held responsible.
Right.
What were they doing?
Right. Including the collector also,
Yeah,
offshore
so,
plans.
yeah, so if they've done their job, fine, fair enough. If they
Let
provided,
us just hope that collector comes out clean now.
right.
Whether
So-
offshore plan was there and whether he could sensitize people in and around, now also it
Yeah.
has to be proved now.
So any plant of this sort is supposed to have an on-site and an off-site disaster management plan.
Right.
Now, according to the disaster management plan, off-site disaster management plan, which is prepared by the plant,
Right.
but then it passes it to the district collector, because the district collector is in charge
Right.
of the off-site disaster management plan.
Right.
Okay, he has to respond, right?
Okay.
Now, in the disaster management plan,
Right.
were the people around the plant told what risk they were at?
Right.
Were they trained on, in the event of a leak,
Right.
no matter how improbable the leak, the event be,
Right.
what should they do?
Right.
It appears to me from my discussion this morning that the people did not know that if a leak happens, that they should walk perpendicular to the wind direction,
That's what.
because that is the fastest way of getting out of a gas leak.
So if the wind is blowing this way, you have to walk like this.
Like
is
this.
but- Okay.
That is absolutely right. And this is exactly what did not happen in Bhopal. The wind was blowing this way and the people ran with the wind and they remained in the gas cloud and they died.
So if you run perpendicularly, you are cutting it. You are
Exactly.
exposed only for shorter duration.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
The second thing that people should know
Right.
is that they should not wear any shoes or slippers which have iron nails in them,
Right.
because those cause sparks when they run.
Right.
And they should not use a motor car or a two-wheeler,
Right.
nor should they switch on or switch off a light, because these can cause sparks.
Right.
And if the substance is an explosive substance,
Right.
there is
Catastrophe.
there is a possibility of
Big
an explosion
Yeah.
being triggered.
Right.
The third thing, did they know that regardless of whether they know what the substance is or not, normally a lot of these substances are soluble in water,
Right.
that they should dip any cloth,
Right.
a bed sheet or a blanket or a shirt or anything, and wrap it around their mouth and nose, and then walk perpendicular to the gas cloud, because that will save their lives.
Okay.
Okay, these were the two things that did not happen in Bhopal, and we lost so many people. That you have to run perpendicular to the wind direction, and that you should wrap a wet cloth around your nose and mouth.
Right.
Okay? We lost literally thousands of people in Bhopal because these two simple pieces of information were not given to people.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So was this done out here in Vizag?
Right.
You know, why did the Pollution Control Board not do this job if this was not done?
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So these are some of the factors that go into why, you know, we continue to have these problems.
Right.
And Vizag is not a city which has not faced these kind of problems. You had a major accident in 1997
Right.
where about 400 tons of LPG leaked when it was being pumped from the harbor, from a ship,
Right.
into the refinery, the Hindustan Petroleum Refinery.
Right.
It leaked, came out, and there was an explosion,
Right.
and it flattened the entire administration building. And subsequently, I managed to get the plant layout, and I found that actually there were CISF barracks, and there were, you know, the bank, which are all smoking areas, very close to the, you can see that in the slide here,
Right.
very close to the LPG tanks.
My goodness.
LPG Horton spheres. And there was a canteen with naked flames close to the tank.
Very
Now, I happened to go to Hindustan Petroleum on a plant inspection.
Right.
I and the others in my committee,
Right.
and we gave Hindustan Petroleum 20 points to follow.
Right.
And it was only after that that they stopped the naked flames in the canteen and put into place several other such measures,
Okay.
which will reduce the
Risk.
possibility of an accident.
Okay.
Now,
But incidentally, 1997 itself, LG Polymers started. They took over from the other one when this accident happened. At least I thought they would have learned by that.
yeah. So, you know, the problem with Vizag is that you are sitting on a huge tankage of hazardous material.
Yeah.
There's a 10,000 ton ammonia tank in the fertilizer plant.
My goodness.
And yeah, no, that tank is a double-walled cryogenic tank, and the probability of a leak is low. But in these days of terrorism, you never know what's going to happen.
And
So-
it is all set to become the capital
Yeah, now
Executive capital.
Yeah, if that tank
of Andhra Pradesh.
if that tank still exists, and if there is something that happens to that tank, I modeled that leak, it's going to wipe out half of Vizag. Half of it, you can see it in the slide here, in
Yeah.
fact. Okay. Half of Vizag is gone.
My goodness.
Now, the other hazardous substance that Vizag has is it is sitting on a lot of LPG. There's LPG in the refinery, you know, in as far as I remember, in tanks which are about 1,000 tons each, and there is LPG in another company called East India Petroleum.
Right.
And those tanks are Horton spheres like this. They look something like this out here. You can see the size of these tanks.
I know.
These are 3,500 ton LPG
Very
tanks.
huge.
Now these are very close to the airport and to the harbour. So if any one of these things leaks and bursts,
Goodness.
you're going to wipe out
Can't even imagine.
the harbour, and you're going to part of the harbour, not the whole harbour, but part of the harbour, and you're going to wipe out a good part of the airport as well. So Visakhapatnam should be renamed as RiskyPatnam.
Yeah. With all these things now, as you have apprised us.
The other risk that Vizag had, now I don't know if it still has, is this was way back in 1997-98, is Visakhapatnam University had done some heavy metal concentration studies in and around the port,
Yeah.
and there were very high concentrations of a lot of carcinogens.
My goodness.
And when I did a risk analysis, I found that there was a clear cancer risk around that area. So for these two reasons, I mean, because you are handling a whole lot of hazardous substances and a whole lot of, you know, carcinogens in the air,
Right.
Vizag is fit to be called RiskyPatnam. And I wonder why, you know, they want to make Vizag the capital, you know, and put more people there.
No,
actually.
after this incident, I think accident, very unfortunate, I don't know. It opens
So-
up the thinking lines.
So what is it that we need to do in order to control this? One thing is very clear, to me at least, that the Pollution Control Board has failed. And this is something that many of us recognize not now, we recognize this more than 10 years back.
Okay.
And I was on a Government of India committee way back, which was to actually suggest modifications to the environmental impact assessment methodology as well as the clearance procedures.
Right.
And Mr. Rajmani, who was the former Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, and I resigned from that committee. Right. Because that committee was not allowed to function according to the way that committee wanted to function.
Right.
And we wrote our own memorandum and sent it to the Prime Minister, and we said shut down the pollution control boards and hand over what the pollution control boards are doing to local self-governments, which means panchayats and corporations, municipalities and so on.
Right.
Now, the reason why we said this is precisely because the pollution control boards, and to that extent even the factories inspectors, have not been doing their job. Now, if you don't do your job,
right,
and if you don't do it for long enough,
right,
then you deserve to be shut down.
And regularly you have to regulate. It's a regulation authority.
Okay. Because the pollution control board has never been able to answer one very simple question. After being in existence now since roughly, let us say, the impact assessment methodology has been there since about the mid-80s. Now we are in 2020. That means we are talking about 35 years. Why is it that the pollution levels in India have actually gone up instead of going down?
Yeah.
So basically the whole question is, are there pollution control boards, right, or are there pollution encouragement boards?
Right.
Okay. So the point is, if somebody doesn't do a job properly, then you say, okay, you can't do the job, fine. You please resign and we'll give it to someone else. And that's what I'm saying. And that's what even Mr. Rajmani said, actually. And for a former secretary to say this, is quite an
alarming situation prevailing.
Yeah. So the lesson that the takeaway for me is that if government is unwilling to do its job or unable to do its job, then people must do it.
That's it. Because it's
and if people must do it, then obviously they have to have far more say in decision making, right, about these things. And therefore, I hope Vizag will have a citizens committee which will oversee the functioning not just of the pollution control board, yeah, until it is shut down finally.
Whatever is risking for the people, yeah, there.
And that they set up, according to the law, there are supposed to be district and local level disaster management committees. Right. Are they functioning in Vizag?
Right.
Revive them and make them function. Right. If the pollution control board and the factory inspectorate can't do its job, then people have to do the job. Right. If people have to do the job, then they have to be empowered. So the story is, to me, is that if the government can't do its job, right, then let people do the job.
It's very fair enough. Very fair enough. So this is the special discussion. Very unfortunate, precious lives have been lost. Many are recovering or recuperating in the hospitals, and some have been discharged, we are told. But where they will be, where they'll be going now, because they can't revisit their homes immediately. I hope the governments will at least start doing some basic thinking, first to accommodate, give them food, necessary medicine, necessary care, and see that psychologically they are counseled in a proper sense. But at the same time, government, both union government and state governments with political parties at stake, have to come clean on the new environmental policy which they are going to amend, stating that the companies or the industries, they can start any unit and later on they can seek or they will be permitted. The permissions can be given later. What does this mean? That means we are compromising our people and our own environment, because you are allowing someone to set up by violating all established norms or the guidelines. In doing so, is it not that people are at risk? So people have to become informed. They should now start fighting for their future, because now Corona has really taught us. Now the environment is really clear and we are able to breathe fresh air. What if by this amendment of new Environment Act, all these type of LG Polymers start happening in and around our area, polluting the basic environment from which we derive oxygen to survive. Because of this styrene, which sees to that there is less amount of oxygen, and nitrous oxide also, I am told, that allows you for this burning of your skin and the eyes. So it will take away the oxygen. Shall we, are we prepared to allow such type of industries or companies to come and be established in our area just for the sake of small jobs, wherein the larger part of revenues will go to those companies and they will support these political parties and their other necessary interests in this form of ancillary units. Again, they will be start polluting and risking 90 to 95% of people, almost 99% of people, risking our lives. Should we allow such type of companies or factories to come in and around us? So we have to take a call. Think about it. That is why in every discussion we have been making it mandatorily very clear that apart from food and water, health, environment should be made as a basic fundamental right. So that governments will be in a position to listen to people. When people are well informed and when environment also becomes a fundamental right, we would never ever give in to establish something which will see to that hazardous chemicals or gases are released as and when such type of accidents or disasters happen. That too costing our precious lives, our own survival. That has to be borne in mind. So for that reason, it is very clear that people should be armed. That is why union government and all the state governments have to understand that instead of amending Environment Act, in that way, you should have a very clear-cut clause amending it, stating that it should be Panchayats or people's will, which should prevail whether that factory or company should be established in that area or not. If it is for the welfare and development of people, then union government, state governments, all political parties should make it very clear that people's life is at stake. People are at risk. Until and unless people understand and until and unless people want of something like that, then only union and state government should go ahead. In the name of just welfare and development, don't impose such type of factories on the people which destroys environment, the basic essence of living. Hope at least now governments across the states as well as union government will take an immediate call and they would immediately inquire as to where they have gone wrong, as to how and why such precious lives have been lost. Both the state government and union government, along with the LG Polymers, the pollution control boards, disaster management committees there, the collector and all those associated officialdom have to answer. Even Jagan Mohan Reddy, the CM of Andhra Pradesh, has come out with an ex gratia of 1 crore, 10 lakhs, 25,000 depending on the enormity. But is that going to bring back these precious lives? Already Corona is creating such a devastation, and top of that, these such type of gas leaks destroying our environment. Can we live peacefully? So think and understand, as our eminent guest has clearly identified the risk factors as to how one should plan and escape. When it flows, when the wind is flowing, you should run or you should walk fast perpendicularly. Take a cloth, dip in water, because most of the gases will be water soluble. Cover your nose and mouth as we are masking now with that water dipped cloth, and then see to that you don't have iron in your shoe or in your slipper, because that is going to again raise a spark if there is an explosive substance, because we do not know which gas and what. If it is an explosive substance, a spark is enough to blow you off. So that will be explosion. Similarly, as you rightly stated, never switch on the light either in home or don't start a car or a scooter without understanding what that gas is. So these precautions will at least help us to safeguard and save, because it is the fundamental aspect of the offshore, whether it is collector or another authority, along with the companies, along with the pollution control board and factories managements to sensitize people. Now we feel they have not done, that is why people are dying, and at least now people become aware and protect their right to live, right to liberty in a better way by forcing governments at the state and center to understand and amend so that food and water, health and environment become fundamental rights. See you with another topic. This is Dr. Tangella, Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Take care, wash your hands with soap or hand sanitizer. Use elbow for cough or sneezes. Maintain physical distance, not social. So that if you maintain physical distance, socially you can unite. Again, whenever you want to greet someone, say namaste, adab or hello.